So let us get this party going. I hope I can get my clicker to work. Aha! There it is. All right, so this is a little bit about me. I know some of you. I'm coaching some of you individually, and then some of you, you don't know me personally, but you're on the Dashing Whippets, which is the club that I coach for in New York City. For those who don't know, I've lived in and around New York City for 23 years, so maybe as long as some of you have been alive. Um, I live currently in Manhattan, actually on the marathon course, basically. But I did spend a little bit of time over in Jersey City, but I've been working in New York City for many years, a very long time. So I can, answer anything about this city really at the, in an instant. I am having trouble with my clicker. There we go. All right. So this is all of the things we're going to cover. As I said, we're going to go through things in great detail so there's no confusion. This race is one of the more complicated, but it's worth it. It's just there's a lot of little logistics things to keep track of. All right. Oh, I know what it is. Okay. So the expo, it takes place at the Jacob Javits Center, which is over on 11th Avenue at 36th Street. It will be in 3 different halls there, 3B, 3D, and 3E. Jacob Javits Center, if you've not been there, is a huge convention center. However, the New York City Marathon Expo is quite large and there's a ton of signs. These pictures are actually from the expo itself. And so, you're not really going to be getting lost. Just follow the crowds and follow the signs. The first thing you're going to do when you get into the expo hall itself, you are going to pick up your bib. And that process is relatively quick and painless. And then from there, you're going to go get your t-shirt, your official race shirt, which is a nice long sleeve from New Balance. New Balance is the official merchandise provider. And so after you do those 2 things, you're going to be directed into the New Balance store there in the expo. If you by chance don't want to buy anything from New Balance, then you're going to have to make your way through all of those crowds and all of the huge line of clothes and all of those things to get out to the rest of the expo floor. So plan for that. The expo floor itself will have hundreds of different vendors, all the running brands that you're used to, any of the name brand shoe brands, Garmin, Coros, and, tons of specialty operators for New York City as well. Tons of picture opportunities. There is also a presentation stage there in the expo, and they do regular course presentations, not as detailed as this. So you have an upper hand. But if you want a refresher, you can also sit through that at the expo. Location, here it is on the map, Javits Center, almost all the way in the west side of Manhattan. And these are the times. Thursday is the first day, 10 to 8 on Thursday, Friday, same 10 to 8, and then Saturday is 9 to 5. You should have picked a slot already in your NYRR profile. It's not, they're not strict about it. No one's gonna check or care if you go at a different time. It's more for organizational purposes. So if you can, sort of be aware of that, that is helpful. You need to make sure you bring your ID and your confirmation form, either an email or the app. The app is not out yet, but once the app is out, that will have the barcode that they need to scan to give your bib to you. There's no proxy pickup allowed for this race at all. Some of the other NYR races do allow it, but this one does not. You have to go in person yourself. Your ID will be checked, and that ID will be matched to you and your face and your information. So all of that has to be done, and you need to make sure you plan that into your weekend or trip here to New York City if you're traveling. Public transit, most people are probably going to take the subway. The closest subway line is the 7 train, which stops at 34th and Hudson Yards. It's the purple star there on the map. That puts you about a block away, so not too bad. However, that's the only train that goes to that station. The other options are the 123 or the ACE that goes to 34th Street Penn Station, and that's several more blocks away. So, plan again, this is going to involve some walking and a lot of time on your feet. If you're coming from the east side, there's the M34 crosstown bus, and that will drop you right next to the Javits Center. So that's close if that's an option. And from New Jersey or points further west, the New York Waterways Ferry drops there right basically a block from the Javits Center. So that is super convenient if you're staying or live in New Jersey. Dining options nearby, Hudson Yards, tons of places to eat there. I do recommend everybody, because this time is going to be when you should be carb loading and preparing for your race. So you need to make sure you're eating all the time and also drinking well all the time throughout the weekend. So do not go hours and hours without having some food. That's really important to race day success. Go as soon as you can. Yeah, this is going to be, it's going to be several hours to do this trip. It's never quick. Reason being, there's a lot of people. The least amount of people will be on Thursday, but there's still going to be crowds. There's still going to be lines, and you're still going to have to navigate your way through large spaces and over multiple blocks. And so it's not a quick thing, right? So ideally, you have all of your stuff prepared. You've done all of these things involving walking and standing and being on your feet, and you've taken care of all of that so that by Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, you are resting. Your stuff is all taken care of. You can put your feet up. You have your plan involved for what time to get up. You've laid out all of the things that you're going to bring. That's how you want to go into Saturday evening and then Sunday morning. You don't want to be running around at the last minute and trying to pick up your bib before they close. I don't recommend that. If you have no choice, obviously, and there's travel delays or things happen and you can't get there any sooner, well then, you just make the best of it. But I would not plan that in advance. That would not be the plan that I would go in with. Gear check. If you are opting to do gear check, you need to get the bag for that at the expo. It's a clear bag. You're only allowed to check that bag. And then you need to take it to Central Park. And you have to do that either on Friday or Saturday. So you have to do it well in advance. There is no bag drop at the start at Fort Wadsworth. They used to do that, but that has gone away. So do not plan on that. It is no longer. You can get to the bag drop there, which is at Rumsey Playfield in Central Park. You can get there from either the east side or the west side at 72nd Street and enter into the park and then walk through the park drive there. The drop-off schedule is 9 to 5, and that's on both Friday and Saturday. So again, if you're going to opt to do this, you need to put this time into your schedules. And the schedule involves first going to the expo, getting the bag and getting your things, then putting your things into the bag and then taking it to Central Park. So again, just with these numbers, I'm going to throw them out. The expo is at 34th Street, roughly 34th and 36th on the far west side. And then this bag drop here is in Central Park at roughly 72nd Street. Okay, so there's a bit of a time to get in between all of these things. Everyone's going to get a poncho, whether you do the bag check or not. So that is a nice feature. So you can opt to not do the bag check if that's something that works out for your post-race plan. This is what the poncho looks like. It is really nice. It has a hood, as you can see. There's Velcro on the front. It's pretty waterproof. And on the inside, it is fleece lined. So it's definitely warm. It's warmer than most things you'll get after a race, which is good because in November in New York City, it is generally cold. Last year is the exception, we hope. Okay. So the bib is going to give you some information, and I'll also give you some information. There's 3 start lines, blue, orange, and pink. Pink used to be green. Pink is new for this year. They just changed the colors, but in every other way, like if you've run this race before, pink is just green. And there are 5 ways. Those are numbered 1 through 5. There are 6 corrals, and those are letters A through F. They assigned roughly 900 people per corral. So they are going for equal distribution, right? Equal distribution between the number of people in each corral, also equal distribution between the different paces and the different start lines. Some people think weird things like they put all the fast people in one wave, in one start, and that's not correct. All of the start lines are going to come together, and I'm going to show you on the course where that happens. And so the paces are distributed. There are 3 official transportation options to get to the start. These are all provided by NYRR, and it is included in your race entry. You had to select these options way back in August. Hopefully you remember what you've selected. If not, you'll be able to see it on your bib, and then also it's on your NYRR dashboard. But the 3 options are the Midtown bus, the Staten Island ferry, and the New Jersey bus. The Midtown bus leaves from in front of the New York Public Library, which is at 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. The Staten Island ferry leaves from it's called Whitehall Terminal on the Manhattan side, and that is basically in Battery Park. And then the New Jersey bus leaves from MetLife Stadium, which is and next to parking lot K near Quest Diagnostics. The clocks do go back 1 hour on that night. So depending on how you look at it, that either gives you an extra hour to sleep or an extra hour to worry. I know for myself, I would be in the worry category, but you do get an extra hour, which is nice. Most everybody's going to start their morning pretty early, so having that extra hour can be beneficial. We're going to look at the starts, how to get there. This is the Midtown bus option. As I said, it leaves right in front of the New York Public Library, specifically the Schwartzman building. And there's a picture of that here on the left-hand side. You can see huge tall building, giant columns, lions, sculptures on either side, right? You're not going to miss it. The buses will be lined up right there, all in a line in front of that building. And they will be in a line many blocks further up on 5th Avenue. So if you look at the map, I have the big orange star there. That's basically where the buses are lined up, and then going further north. Oh, I did want to say the buses load continuously. So what happens is everybody will be gathered and lined up on the north side of Bryant Park, and then you'll make your way around in this crowd, in this big giant crowd of people, and you'll make your way around the north side to 5th Avenue where the buses will be loaded. Once the first, 2-3 buses are loaded, they'll send those buses on. And while that's happening, people are continuing to load bus 4, 5, 6 that are in the line, right? So you're sort of continuously moving and in continuous process, but you're going to arrive there with thousands of other people, and they're all going to be waiting to get on a bus. So there are porta potties available. They will be lined up on the west side of Bryant Park, which is basically 6th Avenue there. I do recommend everybody use the bathroom before they get on the bus. The bus ride itself is going to be about an hour at least, possibly longer. The later buses get snarled up in more traffic going over the bridge, so they take longer. And so you just need to know that you're going to be waiting for a while, and you don't want to have to be urgently needing to go to the bathroom. Hopefully you've been hydrating really well, and so you need to go to the bathroom frequently. So I would just plan on that before you get on the bus. So that's the west side before you get in line on the north side. There are tons of subways nearby, and they all go to Times Square. If you're staying nearby or you're staying in Times Square, which a lot of people are, you can just plan to walk. It's really not that far, and it's pretty simple. You're going to be surrounded by thousands of other people that are also running the race and also going to the buses, so you won't be alone. But in addition to that, keep in mind this is Saturday night / Sunday morning, and so people who are not runners have been out doing their Saturday night kind of thing, and so they will also be out. So this is a situation where you're going to know that it's the largest race in the world. There's a lot of people at all times. You won't be the only one. This is the ferry option, and you can see here the picture on the right. It is, again, huge, big neon signs with the name. So you shouldn't be lost. And again, you're going to see thousands of people, and they're all going to go to the same place. So follow all those people. They'll get you where you want to go. But it's all the way at the tip of Manhattan. Battery Park is there, but the name of the terminal on the Manhattan side, again, is Whitehall Station. So there are two parts to the ferry. Please remember that even if you're taking a ferry, you are also still taking a bus. The ferry will take you on a boat across New York Harbor. You leave from Manhattan, an island. You arrive to Staten Island, an island. And once you get off the boat in Staten Island, you then have to get on a bus that is going to take you to Fort Wadsworth, which is actually the holding ground right next to the start line for the marathon itself. So budget in a lot of time for this option. Budget in a lot of time. Every year there's a backup. The later waves, again, this is going to be the theme overall. The later waves have a larger backup due to the number of people proceeding, right? And so it takes time for all these people to filter through. So if you're in wave 5, you're going to be showing up at the same time as people with wave 3 and wave 4. And it's just a bit of a slow process. So again, make sure you give yourself time. You don't want to be in a panic. You don't want to be sitting on the boat or standing around Staten Island going, I'm supposed to be in my corral right now, and I'm not even to Fort Wadsworth. That's a bad situation to put yourself in. The ferry is free, and it is everyday public transportation. So in addition to thousands of marathoners, you'll also see regular old people riding the ferry, people who live in Staten Island and are going home or going to work, etc. They'll be on the ferry there with you. The ferry does run every 30 minutes. You have, again, selected a time slot. If you ended up getting to Whitehall Terminal and you're early, get on that ferry. There's nothing stopping you. There's no one's going to check. Get yourself to Staten Island with as much time as you possibly can. And the same applies if you end up 5 minutes late and you just missed the ferry. It's okay. There's going to be another one coming. So you don't have to worry too much about that part of it. It's every 30 minutes. There's tons of subway stations nearby. The one will stop basically right in front of Staten Island Ferry, and the NW also right in front of Staten Island Ferry. That's the yellow line. The 4-5 stops a couple of blocks away, but it's not too bad. A 10-minute walk. Anybody can do that. Okay, this is the timeline for the morning. As you can see, there are tons of different waves and there's tons of starts going off. So again, if you're in one of those later waves, when you're arriving and going through security, you might hear the start for the professional men, or for wave one. There's going to be numerous cannon blasts and numerous announcements all morning long. You don't have to worry. You just have to know what your specific time is and what your specific schedule is. So for the regular people, regular runners, wave one will go off at 9:10. Wave two will go off at 9:45. Wave three goes off at 10:20. Wave four goes off at 10:55, and wave five goes off at 11:30. These are all separate starts with time in between. This is not a continuous flow. Continuous flow is all the corrals, A to F, that's continuous flow, but the separate waves are separate and distinct with their own start. Now we're going to look at the start map in all its details. So as I mentioned, everybody's going to go to Fort Wadsworth and they're going to wait. And Fort Wadsworth is a national park. Your drop-off point will vary, depends on what mode of transportation you use to get there. Do note that the bridge closes at 7 a.m. All of the buses for the Midtown bus have to be over and across the bridge before it can close at 7 a.m. That's why if you signed up for the bus option, that's why all of those times are early. The bus option works really super great for people in wave one. It's not as super great for people in the later waves. And again, that's why the ferry gets really backed up, because almost all of the later waves have opted for that choice. So if you take the ferry, again, you're going to take the ferry to Staten Island and you're going to get out of the Staten Island ferry terminal and get on a bus. The bus is then going to drive you. It's about 3 miles. It's going to take you here to the ferry drop-off, which is at the north end, and it's at School Road. So you're going to enter from that north end point, which is closest to the Blue Village there. If you've taken the Midtown bus option, you're going to be dropped on the Verrazano Bridge itself. So you can see that right there in the middle. And then if you've opted for rideshare, this is really only for people that are staying on Staten Island or people that are coming from way South Jersey or something like that. Then the rideshare option you will have to leave all the way to the south and all the way to the west there. You're only allowed to bring in the start bag. You're going to get a start bag at the Expo. It's a clear bag. It is smaller, but you can still put several things in it. And then anything that you have on your person is fine, like layers and things that you're wearing, that's all fine. If you opt to wear different shoes and then carry your race shoes, I do recommend that, as it is a very long morning. And it's just, you don't want to be walking around in race shoes all day long. So a good option for that is to just tie the laces together and sling them around your neck. That way you don't have to worry about stuffing them in the bag. They don't really fit. NYPD is going to search every single person on arrival. And this, again, is a place where it takes time. So you're going to arrive, you're going to get off your bus or out of the rideshare, wherever you get dropped, and you're going to have a huge line of security for people to be checked individually. They're going to pat you down. There are metal detectors. There's a wand. They're going to go through your bag and make sure you don't have anything that isn't allowed. So one thing that has been changed in terms of what is allowed, you are allowed to wear a hydration vest now. However, you are not allowed to use the bladder in the back. You're not allowed to have any container with liquids that is over 2 liters. So again, none of those giant bladders. However, if you want to wear the vest and you want to use the pockets up front with the bottles, that is fine. And that is a change for this year. So in case you've run before, that's a new thing. You do want to dress in multiple layers, throwaways. You are going to be cold. Hopefully it's cold, and you do not want to sit out there everybody should plan to be out there for at minimum 1 hour. Some people will be out there for multiple hours. It is part of the day. I know, I'm sorry. Everybody wants to just be comfortable and have their own, cake and eat it too, but that doesn't work for this race. So plan to be out there for at least an hour. Make sure you're going to be comfortable. Make sure you have multiple things on to keep yourself warm, and you're going to throw them away. It is nice to have something to sit on because a lot of this fort area is grass. There are some sections that are paved and there are curbs to sit on and things like that. But it is nice to lay down and relax. Again, you're going to be out there probably, in the neighborhood of an hour or more, and you don't want to burn up a lot of energy before you run a marathon. Instead, you want to get out there and be so chill and relax, like you've got nothing else to do, you know nowhere else to go. Just lay down and relax. So things to bring, options: pieces of cardboard, yoga mats, or any type of large towel, beach towel, blankets, other people. I've seen people bring like those pool floaty things that they blow up when they get there. I mean, like, people get really creative. But also garbage bags or any large sections of plastic, or old heat sheets. All of these things are useful to just protect you from the grass, keep you a little bit warm. And then the other thing I mentioned here is entertainment. Things that I recommend for that: very old school paper, magazines, books, crossword puzzles, things like that. Like you can obviously use your phone to entertain yourself. You might want to be aware of the battery usage and things like that. And so sometimes people do bring a battery charger that they're then going to throw away. So that's an option. And you can always, just chat with friends, or you can just, sleep. Sometimes it looks like people are out there sleeping. There is no bag check at Fort Wadsworth, so anything you bring out there is either going to be thrown away and never seen again, or you're going to run with it for the entire marathon. So keep that in mind. Don't bring anything valuable that you don't want to run with. All right, there's these 3 villages: blue, orange, and pink. They're all color-coded here on the map. They're all the same, essentially. However, they differ for the corral lineup. That's where it's important. There are several private tents located on the island, and those are in purple here on the map. Any of your charities, the larger charities, have their own private tents. Local elite, if you're in the local elite corral, I've been in that, then you have a tent. If you've run 15 or more New York City marathons, you have a tent. If you're in the pace team or the VIP, if you're a VIP, I hope you know it, you get a tent. So those will also include private bathroom options. So those are nice things. If you have access to that, make sure you hang out in there, because it's going to be a lot less people, which is cool. All the amenities are the same in between all of the 3 villages, so you don't have to go, oh, I want bagels, I have to go to the orange. No, there's bagels at all of them. They're all the same. They're located in different places there, I've highlighted on the map, but they are all going to have alkaline water, which is Flow brand alkaline water. That is the sponsor for the New York City Marathon. All the water will be the same. Gatorade Endurance, also a sponsor. SIS Energy Bars, sponsor. Dunkin' Donuts, sponsor. Coffee, tea, hot cocoa, and bagels. So lots of hot drink options, which is great. Some things to munch on, which is also great. You might want to bring your own snacks. I do recommend that, having something with you, because again, this is several hours long. This morning is lengthy, and you want to prepare yourself really well and be well fueled to start your race. So make sure you have stuff in your stomach. There are 1,700 porta potties. They are located all throughout the village, and they are within the corrals themselves, which is great. I'm going to explain more about the corrals in a later slide, but that is a key feature of this race. Take advantage. You can walk between the villages. You can hang out in a different village. No one cares. Doesn't matter. They're only checking once you get to the corrals. That's where they care. When you go to enter the corrals. Before that, if all your friends are in orange and you're in blue, you can spend your entire time hanging out in orange. All good. As I mentioned before, I don't recommend trying to burn up a lot of energy walking in between and doing a lot of activities during this time. I recommend taking this time to save your energy. This is a picture of one of those private tents, if you have access to that. This one is enclosed. It's also heated, which is really nice. And as I said, it's fenced in and they have their own private bathrooms, porta potty bathrooms. And they'll also have their own tea, coffee, water, all of that stuff. So if you have this tent option, you can just hang out in there in your own little walled off area. It's really nice. The local elite tent is not enclosed and not heated, so it's not as fancy as this. This is a charity tent. It's not as fancy as that tent, but it does have all of those separate amenities and also the separate bathrooms. So that part is nice. There are porta potties all over. You'll see long lines of them, long rows. A lot of time what happens is people will go through security, and once they first make it into the village, there'll be lines of porta potties and they'll go right there. And those will have really long lines. If instead you pass over those and you keep walking and just walk deeper into the village, you'll find more porta potties with shorter lines. So do not go, unless it's an emergency, you don't have to go to the first place you see. You can keep going, you'll find more. Make yourself comfortable. This is a picture of people doing what I recommend doing, which is just laying down, napping, reading, chatting, all those things. You can see here, this is grass. So a lot of the village, it's those 3 villages, it's grass primarily. And so people have here sleeping bags, and you can see they're all bundled up, hats, gloves, multiple layers, jackets, blankets, towels, etc. That's what you want because you're going to be there for a while. This gentleman over here in the other picture by the porta potties is sitting there on a curb, and that does work, but he's like sitting 10 feet from a porta potty. So I don't know if that's winning, but that's another option. All right, the lineup. This is very important. The lineup is done in a procedure, on a schedule, and it is not wishy-washy. It is a firm schedule. Do not be late for your corral because they close on time. If you want to run where you're assigned to run, you need to be there when they open. There is some leeway. The corrals are open for basically 20 minutes. They're going to give you a schedule for that exactly. But for each of the waves, the corrals will open and be open for about 20 minutes before they close. Then there's a period of time where they're closed and no one can enter. So you do not want to be that person, because if you do that, they're going to push you back to the next wave and you will not have the option to start where you're supposed to start. This is the corral lineup. You can see each of these start colors has a different lineup, but A through F, these areas are all fenced in. There's 10-foot tall fences. There's barbed wire on the top. There's gates. There's volunteers and people at every entrance. It is checked. So you're not going to be able to just, oh, I'm in C, but I feel like going to A. That's not possible. You're allowed to move back, but you're not allowed to move forward. And they will look at your bib before you go in. So keep that in mind. I do recommend people wait to take off their last layer until you're on the bridge. So what's going to happen is if you want to be one of the first people in the corrals, then you're going to line up for the corrals before the corral opens. When the corral is scheduled to open, they're going to open the gate, they're going to check bibs, and they're going to allow people to enter. Then you're going to wait there in that corral, but there's bathrooms, so you don't have to worry. You can go to the bathroom there while you wait. For about 20 minutes, they're going to close the corrals. The gate is going to close. Everybody will be locked off and standing there. And then after like a couple of minutes, once they're getting, everybody organized together, they're going to walk you from that corral lineup out onto the bridge itself, the Verrazano Bridge, for your start line. So there is a period of time where you are waiting. Again, you're waiting and waiting to wait. But once you're out on the start line, you have a couple of minutes. So I recommend having something really quick that you can toss off, not things that are complicated, not like pants, like, oh, I got to take my shoes off and I got to balance on one foot and I got to, not like that, not at that point. But at that point, when you're waiting on the bridge, something like a trash bag that you can just have over your head, you can rip it off, something like a heat sheet that you can wrap yourself up in. And then when it's time to go, you literally toss it to the side, something like a hoodie, which you have zipped up. And then once there's time to go, you unzip it really quickly and you toss it to the side. These are things, or blankets, or anything like that. Nothing complicated that involves like you can't see or you're balancing and you're trying to take things off. But you will be standing there and you will get cold. So that's what I recommend for that. If you want to do a quick warm up before you start your marathon, I don't recommend you do that while waiting in the village, even though there is plenty of time and there is plenty of space for that. But the timing, the schedule for that doesn't really work, because you will have to get into your corral and then wait for the corral to move and then wait for the start gun. And in that time, you've already gotten cold again. So warming up, getting cold, and then starting to run is not the idea of how warm up works. So don't do that. Instead, what you want to do is, when they are moving everybody from the corrals in Fort Wadsworth out onto the bridge to the starting line, you can do strides there. You can do some drills. You have some room to move as people are going out onto the bridge. There will be space there, so that's when you do it. And then once you're there out on the bridge, you're going to start running relatively quickly after that, within two to four or 5 minutes. If you're somebody who wants to move up, say you want to run with the pacer who's in B and you're assigned in C, then what you would do is you try to get yourself into the corral as soon as possible. You get yourself to the front of C, and then once they're moving everybody out onto the bridge, you make your way calmly past people up towards the front. This is really possible because, again, people are moving and they drop the rope separating the corrals at that point. So it's possible if you put yourself in a good position to start with in the corrals, when people start walking, you could make your way all the way up to A if you want. And you don't have to push people and you don't have to shove and you don't have to panic. You just have to calmly say, excuse me, and walk your way through people to get where you want to go. This is a picture of what the start lines look like. These are all out on the bridge, and as you can see, there's those 3 colors. They're each divided, completely divided. There's no there's no melding between these different colors at this point of the race, and they each have their own start line, and it is staggered there. This is from the other side. This is once you've reached Brooklyn, and this is looking back towards Staten Island. So you can see you come over the Verrazano Bridge there. The blue wave will start on the right side of the upper level of the Verrazano Bridge. The orange wave starts on the left side of the upper level of the Verrazano Bridge. And the pink wave, formerly the green wave, starts on the left side on the lower level of the Verrazano Bridge. And then you can see these are all still separate courses, separate races technically, and they're all going to come off the bridge in a different fashion. So from mile 2 to 3 of the race, there's nothing that's the same between any of these three colors. However, the differences are small and it is only a mile. It's not a huge difference. There is some difference between the elevation gain of the running on the upper level versus running on the lower level, but it is small. We are talking like literally 10 feet difference. It's not a huge difference, and it's 1 mile of the race. No one needs to worry about these little things, and especially this early in the race, because this is the very beginning and everybody's fresh and excited and full of energy. I'm going to go through the course in broad overview. Then we're going to go through the course in minute detail, but just overview quickly. There is a clock located at every 5K, the half, and mile 20 marker. This clock will also include a timing mat, which will register your chip. If you have people tracking you on the app, the only locations that are confirmed and real are when you're crossing the timing mat and your chip registers your time. The other locations, it will show you a location for people tracking you, but that is an estimated location, and oftentimes it's not accurate. It's close, but it's not really accurate. So tell people that are tracking you that the only things that are real, 5K, the half, and mile 20. Everything else estimated. There are still markers along the course at every mile. This is a point-to-point course. You will go across 5 rows, which make up New York City. You are generally traveling starting in the south and running north. So overall, you are traveling north. There is potential for headwinds. We have windy days here in New York City. Today was a particularly windy day, over 20-mile-per-hour winds. There are certain points in the course, not the entire course, because there's certain places where you're blocked by buildings and structures and things like that. But there are certain points in the course where it is wide open and you can feel a headwind, and I'll point those out. But if you're checking the wind on the morning of, that's what you want to look for. Look for what direction it's coming. There are 5 bridge crossings that cross between the boroughs. Verrazano, Pulaski, Queensboro, Willis Avenue, and Madison Avenue. There are aid stations located throughout the course. They all have the same things: alkaline water, Flow brand alkaline water, Gatorade Endurance. They start at mile 3. Mile 3 is the first of these aid stations. They're spaced 1 mile apart. They are not at mile 5, 7, or 9. However, plenty of aid stations on this course. There are SIS gels located in 2 spots on this course, mile 12 and mile 18. The flavors are citrus, which is the caffeinated version, and the non-caffeinated options are orange, lemon lime, tutti frutti, and tropical. Bananas are located at mile 21 and 23. Hopefully you know that you should use more than 2 gels to run a marathon, and so hopefully you're going to bring some of your own, even if you're using what's on course. 2 gels is not enough. Unless you're Kipchoge. He finishes fast, but everybody else needs more. Porta potties are located at all the aid stations if that's something you need. Here's some pictures of the aid stations. As you can see, huge, long, lots of volunteers, tons of people. They all want to give you a cup. I just said this. Mile 3 to 25, they're every mile except for 5, 7, and 9. They're on both sides of the street. They're a full city block long. There's no shortage of people. If you want a cup, if you want 2 cups, you have the option of getting that at these aid stations. The lineup will be Gatorade first and then water. They do have signs too, and you can see them here in these pictures. There'll be signs overhead that say Gatorade and then say water. But also the volunteers will be calling that out, and the cups are different with a different logo on them. So you shouldn't have any confusion about that. I do really recommend if the first couple of people in the line for the aid station, if that's jammed up, do not worry, stay to the middle and then cut in later. When at any point, once you've gotten your cup, please grab your cup and then go back to the middle so that you can keep the flow going that helps people. If you run all the way down the line next to all the volunteers, you're blocking, you're often blocking people behind you. So, you know, as much as we can be courteous and helpful to each other, that's great. All right, so we're going to look at the elevation now of the course. This is, both of these actually show the same thing. They're just showing it in different ways. So this is an elevation comparison between all of the 6 marathon majors, and the names are there. A lot of people have run these or looking to run these, so this gives a nice comparison of them. New York City Marathon gains 810 feet over the distance. Boston Marathon gains 815 feet. And then the other 4 are pretty flat. Pancake, some of these are pancake flat, but most of them are overall flat. This just gives you know, a nice frame of reference, right? So if you are someone who has already run Berlin or Chicago this year, I know I'm coaching people, and I know people that have done this. There's a lot more climbing in this marathon. So, you know, keep that in mind in terms of pacing and in terms of times and comparisons, right? I have here my Garmin data from the 2 times I ran this prior. One was 2019, and that was, I was in the orange wave then. And then in 2021, I was in green. These are also captured with 2 different Garmin watches, so you'll note the numbers are different between them. It's not just that I was in different waves, but they're also just, it's different technology. I do, however, you can see the trends, right? So the largest climbs between both are the largest climbs, right? Those are the largest numbers here. Do also note that both times I ran this race, I recorded 26.4. And of all the marathons I've run, 19 total, I've almost always 26.4 or greater. So that's what you should expect. You should not expect to clock 26.2 on your watch ever. These are the, and I'm going to explain why that is. I'm going to explain the whole technology behind it. I'm going to explain that in the pacing section at the end, but I'm just stating that. These are the 5 bridges. We're going to go over the major climbs of the marathon. The 5 bridges are all climbs, and some are big climbs and some are not so big climbs. But Verrazano first climb, that is the largest climb of the entire morning. That's 150 feet over a mile. It is a very long bridge. It's a mile up and a mile down, basically. But that starts off the race, so you're super fresh and energy's high. Pulaski comes, you reach it right about the halfway point. It's a 50-foot climb over a quarter mile. Queensboro Bridge is another one of those longer bridge climbs. That's the 2nd largest climb of the marathon. It's 100 feet over 3/4 of a mile. Willis Avenue Bridge is shorter and steep. It's 50 feet over 1/8 of a mile. Madison Avenue Bridge is just a little bump. It's less than 20 feet, and it's really short, but it does count as a climb, and you'll know it. You'll be able to count it off. When you're going into Clinton Hill, you're on Lafayette Avenue. This is at mile 8. There's a 50-foot climb there, and there's another reason you're going to notice that climb, and I'm going to explain it once we get to the course, the mile by mile breakdown. There's this is the 3rd largest climb into Central Park. You're running on 5th Avenue. It starts actually before mile 23, just before mile 23. It's a full mile long, and it's an 80-foot climb. Into Central Park, you go into Central Park, you go out of Central Park, then you go back into Central Park. But that's all at the end of the course. There are 2 climbs at the end of the course. One is on Central Park South at mile 25. You climb 20 feet as you approach Columbus Circle and the Time Warner Center. Then you make a right, you go back into the park, and you're on Central Park West Drive. You make another 20-foot climb up to the finish line. The finish line finishes on a hill by Tavern on the Green. The second half has more gain than the first. If you go out and you set a PR in the 5K, the 10K, or the half, you are setting yourself up for a world of hurt in this race. I cannot stress that enough. The second half of a marathon, this marathon, which is already hard, has more gain than the first. You need to plan your race strategy with that in mind. Another couple of just overview things about the course. This is actually a screenshot from the Berlin Marathon website. So a lot of these big races, these majors, have a blue line marking the course. Most other courses, that blue line marks the tangent line. In New York, it does not mark the tangent line. It's actually 43 kilometers running on the blue line from start to finish. And I know we don't know kilometers that well, but a marathon is, you can see it right there, 42,195 kilometers. So you're running almost a full kilometer extra if you run on the blue line in New York. So you don't need to do that. Don't run on the blue line. It's not the shortest distance. You're already going to run extra. You don't need to run on the blue line. What does that mean? That means that if you want to run the tangents, then you need to be aware of what the course is doing and where. And then you have to figure it out on your own. And that is A, tricky because it's an extra thing that you have to think of. But then B, on top of that, even if you know where the tangent is, there are going to be multiple situations where you are not going to have the option to run the tangent, even if you wanted to. There's going to be 50 people in between you and the tangent line. And unless you know how to fly, you're not going to be able to push your way through 50 people to get through the tangent line. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do the best you can. There's going to be certain points, depending upon where you are in the race. Like if you're one of those people that's in wave 1 corral A, you're going to have a crowded start, but the race is going to clear out. And especially as you get later and later and you get to the Bronx and you get to Central Park, you're going to have lots of room to run. So if you're one of those people, you will have room, but it's not going to be the entire way along. If you're in the middle, you're going to have the hardest time. If you're in the back and you're in the later waves in the back corrals, you again are going to have more room to roam because that's, the middle is where the most of the people are and the most of the crowds. The average finish time for this race is 4 hours and 30 minutes, which is 10:20 per mile. So if you're in that middle or around that, right? So 4 hours, 4:20 or 4:40, 4:45, 4:50, that's where the majority are. And you can see from this picture here and all the pictures throughout this presentation, there's just a lot of people at most times. So this is the largest marathon in the entire world. So don't expect to have the place to yourself. All right, now I'm going to take a little breather because I want to know if people have questions about any of the stuff I've gone over. The next part is going to be the mile by mile breakdown, the finish, and pacing. So I'm just going to exit and see if there's anything in the chat. I think. Nothing in the chat. Okay, great. Is it okay to take an Uber to the ferry terminal? Yes, it is. And there's plenty of room for that. So that's in Manhattan. And there's a lot of room for that. What happens once you get to Staten Island on the other side is there's a lot of roads blocked. There's security everywhere and not just like a cop car. They park those big dumpster trucks blocking entire roads. And so it's very difficult to do anything once you get to the Staten Island side. But lower Manhattan on that race morning, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., you're going to be fine. You're going to be good. Any other questions? Getting to the start, Athletes Village. They don't call it Athletes Village. They call it Athletes Village for Boston. All the clothes before the start will have to be thrown off. Yes, at some point. You know, if there's something that you want to wear for the first mile or 2 or 3 while you're still warming up, that's fine. You know, things that are easy to throw off while you're running, things like arm sleeves. I often run with arm sleeves. They're inexpensive. And, you know, if I get hot, I just take them off and I throw them to the side, and it's not a big deal. And I can do that at mile 6 or mile 8 or mile 10. That's fine, right? I assume that you're not going to try to toss off like sweats, you know, that are complicated things. But yeah, anything you take off, you're just not going to get back. They will have huge donation bins. They will be located in the corrals. And so if you take things off in the corrals, you can put them in directly in those bins. If, however, you walk out to the starting line on the Verrazano Bridge and you take some layers off there, then they will come by and collect those in bags. It's still fine. It's still going to go to donation, but just the bins are located in the corral. Okay, this is my first time and I have a ferry time at 8 a.m. What time would you suggest to get to the ferry? Ferry time at 8 a.m. So I would try to be at the ferry at, you know, 7:30. And then that assures that you're getting on that 8 a.m. ferry. So your ferry, scheduled ferry time is ideally when you're boarding the ferry to go across New York Harbor, right? So all of these things involve some amount of time. Getting to the ferry terminal is itself a couple of minutes process to go through the terminal, line up for the ferry, then board the ferry. They close the doors, they get everything secured, and then the ferry departs, right? So just you showing up to Whitehall is not you getting on the ferry. You need to build in minutes around all of that. And the same thing with getting off the ferry on the other side. So minutes around every one of these junctions. It's just better to have more time. And, you know, I know everybody wants to stay in bed, but like 15 minutes of extra leeway time to deal with all of the transfers and taking it nice and calmly is going to be better than stressing, panicked, running late, and, you know, in a kind of hurry and making some race out of the morning when you already have a race ahead. The marathon is the goal, right? So as much as we can keep everything calm before that. Way 4. Yes. Again, I cannot stress enough. I know it seems illogical. You're like, I'm not running until 10:55. I'm in wave 4. Why do I have to go so early? You have to go so early because all of these things involve thousands of people and everybody's going to be moving really slowly and jammed up. And then all of these points are choke points. You're going to be in lines waiting. So you're going to show up and you're going to wait. You're going to go the next step, you're going to wait. You're going to get off the bus on Staten Island at the fort. You're going to wait. You're going to wait in line for security. You're going to move your way through security. You're going to wait in line to go to the bathroom. You're going to go to corral. You're going to wait in line to get in the corral. Everything is aligned. I'm sorry. That's just how the morning is. Please bear with this morning. Make it as fun as you can. Try to meet up with friends. Try to bring something to do. Try to give yourself some distraction. Try to make it exciting. It's inherently not that. It's a pain in the ass, but just give yourself time. Let it go smooth and know that it's going to pass. That's the thing. The thing is, I've done this race twice and I'm always like, why? It's so many hours, but the time goes by like this. It goes by quickly. So just go through, get yourself nice and early, do all the things as recommended, give yourself plenty of time, and the time will fly by and you're going to have a nice, smooth morning. So that's what I recommend. All right, next question. Do you know why the blue line isn't the tangent line for New York City? I have read some things about that, and basically it's just a historic thing. And also, World Athletics, it's not a rule of World Athletics that it marked the tangent line. The rule for World Athletics is Athletics is a governing body, right? So they do have a rule that says the course must be marked and clear, and you must have distinguishing markers to show where the course ends, what the boundaries of the course are. And so people and races decided over time that, oh, well, we have to mark this course and we have to mark a line. So why don't we mark where the tangents are to facilitate the racers? But New York City, for whatever reason, and this goes back like since the beginning of New York City. So, we're at like New York City Marathon 52 or something like that. But anyway, so it's just, this is the way it's been for a long time and they haven't changed it. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of that. I think now I've answered all these things, I think. Anyone else? Anyone else? One more thing I do want to say just about getting to the ferry and the later waves. It's not fair. It's not as fair. You're going to have more people. What's going to happen is people are going to miss their waves. They're going to not budget enough time, and they're going to be pushed back. They're going to be pushed back to you. So all of this dominoes effects and the building up, it affects wave 4 and wave 5 way more than it affects wave 1. That's the fact of the matter. Getting to the village later, there's going to be not the porta potties may not all have toilet paper in them. That affects the later waves way more than it affects wave 1. Again, these things it's not uniform and it's not fair, but that is the reality on the ground. So I really just want everybody to prepare and know where you are, what your day is going to be, and make it the best day that you possibly can by having all of these things worked out in advance. Okay, I'm going to now go through the course in the mile by mile, and that will answer maybe some more questions as well. I have to figure out how to share my thing again. Here we go. Sharing. Sharing is caring. All right. Dun-dun-dun. Thanks for hanging out with me here tonight, guys. All right. So Brooklyn, you're in Brooklyn for the majority of the race. You actually arrive there in mile 2. The start, you spend about 5 seconds in Staten Island because as soon as you start the race, you're already leaving Staten Island. And that's across the Verrazano. So the courses are separate, technically separate from the beginning all the way until mile 8 in Brooklyn. There's a part where they all 3 converge and it becomes one course. However, you are running basically side by side each other from mile 3 to 8. I'm going to show you pictures of what that is. Pink, which is formerly green, you should know on the underside of the Verrazano, which is the start of your race, your watch is going to do all kind of crazy things because you're underneath a bridge. So again, it's the beginning of the race and you shouldn't be really worrying about your pace too much at that point. If anything, you should just be saying, pull back and chill. But that's what your watch is going to be doing. Weird things. All right, now we're going to look at miles 1 to 5 in closer detail. And I have zoomed in here the elevation at the bottom of what those miles look like. So that gives you a nice visual. There is a lovely skyline once you're crossing the Verrazano Bridge. One of the best parts of the marathon is right there. You look to your left, everybody look to your left. the downtown Manhattan skyline that you see in movies, with New York Harbor out before you. It's beautiful. There's helicopters flying all around you. There's FDNY harbor boats shooting off water cannons. It is so grand and it's so exciting. The start for the race is a cannon fire, and Frank Sinatra Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, playing over the loudspeakers. There's just not a start that is better than this, and I've run a lot, and I'm sorry, but that is the truth. It's really great. So all of these things are going through you in the beginning, and you're gonna feel like you're floating on air. Largest climb of the race is right there in the beginning, and you can see it visually on the bottom, but it's also followed by a large descent that comes right after. So it's bang and then bang. Huge climb, huge descent. And as I mentioned before, all of these things that are going on around you and the excitement and energy of the race is pumping through you. And so basically, just don't worry about it. You should be slow on mile 1. That's how this race should go. And it's kind of like a give. It's a throwaway. It's throwaway miles right there. Mile 1, start to mile 1, and then mile 1 to mile 2. Mile 3 brings that first of those aid stations. Don't miss it. Don't miss any aid stations. I really think everybody should get water at every aid station. Patience is key, really. There's so much race. These early miles do not, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. If you're off, that's fine. You kind of should be. Save it for later. It's fine. All right. Here's some pictures. I think everybody can expect that you're going to be really packed in the beginning, and that's okay. That's the start of the largest marathon in the world. And the energy is just, I mean, it's like plus 12. So it's fine to share that with thousands of your friends. This is just a fun thing. If you put your name on your shirt, you can see some people in the pictures with their name like big on their shirt, or you can write it on your bib or whatever. But New Yorkers, when they see that, they're going to call your name, and they're going to say specifically, you know, look at this guy here. They're going to say, go Fred, go Fred. And it's simultaneously cool and also kind of bizarre, having done this myself, having your name called out for like multiple hours from all directions is cool. It's also a little weird, but it's overwhelmingly cool. So you should do that. And, you know, anyway, like you don't have to permanently affix it to your shirt, but you can just write it on Sharpie, but make it big so people can see it. Mile 5 to 10, here's the elevation here in the bottom of what that is. Spectators, you're gonna be on 4th Avenue, which is basically downtown Brooklyn, central business district of Brooklyn, busy, exciting, hip Brooklyn, all in this section. And so the energy still is huge. Once those courses come together, you're gonna there's BAM, which is Brooklyn Academy of Music, nice big historic theater building, and the courses are gonna converge. There's a big stage and a band playing at that corner, and so you then are gonna feel like you're in like a video game or in Rockstar or something. But it's like the energy in this section is still huge, and it's infectious. From mile 8 to 8.5 is that Lafayette Avenue climb. You can see it here on the elevation here at the bottom. It's not huge, but it is a slowdown. This also happens to be the point where the course narrows. So multiple things are happening here. 3 things are happening. 1, all these courses are converging together. So large groups of people are smushing together. 2, It's a wide roadway going down to a narrow roadway. You start going through the more suburban areas of Brooklyn. So 2, everybody's smushing together. Then 3, it's this incline. And so there's a big slowdown here. You don't, again, that's not worth stressing over. Just expect it's going to happen. You'll have plenty of time to make it up later. Do not let it bother you. Just know that it's going to come. This is a picture of 4th Avenue. These 2 sections, which are divided by that middle median, these are the quote different courses. Now, as you can see, it's basically the same road, right? It's just divided. So technically separate courses, but running the same road elevation and all of that. This here is when they come together. It's a big, wide 4 lanes, and then it shrinks down to 2, and everybody smushes together, and you're climbing a hill. And so it gets really tight there. Just know that that's going to come. Don't panic. Now we're Brooklyn from mile 10 to 14, sorry. Actually, you start crossing into Queens around mile 13. So just past the 15K mark, 15K is roughly mile 9. You're going to make a left on Bedford Avenue, and you're going to travel through South Williamsburg. And also, you're just going to be through Williamsburg and the part of Brooklyn that's more as suburbs as like New York City gets, which is, you're on these big, wide business districts, streets with, huge towers and huge buildings and, thousands of people lining the route all the way along. And then you go to these tiny, there's individual brownstones and, there are still people out cheering, but it's much less than what you've experienced before. At mile 12, you go by the first SIS gel station. Really, really make sure you're getting in your gels as you go along. It can be hard because there's so many distractions and things going on in this course. There's a lot to keep track of, but you have to fuel or you're not going to race well. This segment is relatively flat until you get to that second bridge and the third borough of the race, which is the Pulaski is the second bridge. It's not a huge climb, but it is a climb. You will notice it. You can see it. These are pictures of what it looks like. As you can, you can visually tell with your eyes. You can see it ahead of you. You can see the climb coming. But at this point, you're crossing the half of the marathon, and so that's great. That's a milestone. We celebrate everything as we go. This is not a long climb at all. It's one of those shorter, steeper climbs. Now we're into Queens. All right. So crossing the Pulaski, here again are some nice views crossing that bridge. If you look to your left, you get all of the East Side, Midtown, East Side Manhattan. That's really pretty. Queens itself is not particularly scenic, and it becomes really industrial. You don't spend a lot of time in Queens, but overall it's, warehouses and gas stations. Your watch is going to do weird things in this segment. If it starts doing weird things as you're approaching the Queens Bridge, because there's overhead subway tracks, that 7 NRW is overhead. And then as you go onto the bridge, you actually are on the lower level of the bridge. So this is what this segment looks like in Queens. You make 5 turns in Queens, and you're barely there for like a mile and a half before you start going over another bridge. So as much as you can, try to be aware of those tangents. If you can maneuver, if you have the room, try to give yourself, try to hug those turns as much as you can to cut down on the distance. this is another flat section. So in between these bridges is the Pulaski to get into Queens and the Queensboro to get out of Queens. But in between that is flat. You can see that on the elevation. Nice and flat. These flat sections are where you can regroup, where you can pick up a couple of seconds if you need to pick up a couple of seconds. These flat sections in between the climbs, that's where you do it. Queensboro Bridge is long. It's a full mile long. And as I said before, it's the second largest climb of the race. So expect you're going to slow down going over this bridge. You should. Do not try to maintain marathon pace on this large and long of a climb. It's a picture of what Queensboro Bridge looks like. This is both sides. So the left side is leaving Queens, and then the right side is entering into Manhattan. I do want everybody to note, it's not really distinguishable, but the incline going from Queens to Manhattan, it's longer on that side. It's a longer, more gradual climb. And the decline going into Manhattan is steeper and shorter. So it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not equal up and equal down. There's no spectators on this segment at all. You can, I personally, I like this part. I like having quiet for a little bit because 90% of this race is overstimulation. It is like energy and spectators like at plus 10%, plus 10, and bands and, you know, all kinds of things to see and to draw your focus. That's 99% of this race. So when there's this opportunity like this bridge, you can use this time of silence to refocus yourself, check in with yourself, see how you're doing. This is a good time in the race to say, how am I holding up? How are the legs doing? How is my energy level? How is my form? These are times when you want to do that because there's not as many distractions, and you need to be doing that throughout the race. All right, so we're into Manhattan. This is great. You will cross from the Queensboro Bridge into Manhattan and run up First Avenue. This is the longest straight of the course, and it's relatively flat. You have 3 miles here without a single turn, so that's pretty noteworthy for this course. And 65 blocks is relatively flat. It's a little rolly, but it actually trends overall downhill. So this is a section where, again, use the course to your advantage. You can use these 3 miles if you need to pick up a little bit, pick up 5 seconds a mile over these 3 miles, disperse it out, run wisely, run disciplined and smart. That's what you want to do. You don't want to try to eat the entire apple in one bite. A marathon is about stringing it out, pacing yourself over the distance, right? So you're going to take little bites to eat the apple. Little bites eat the apple. Mile 18, you pass the second SIS gel station. This is the elevation there. You can see at the bottom. I mean, right? This looks good. This is a nice part of the course. I just said that. Opt to, if you need to, gradually, small, gradual changes. This is where you can make up some time. If there's a headwind that's from the north, which is common, that's the most common direction for the wind. Living here, I can tell you that. Oh yeah, I forgot. I live. This is my section. This is my race park. I run this all the time. So, if there's a headwind, this running on First Avenue is where you might notice it. Hopefully, it's not a factor at all, and you can just throw this out the window. But if so, do try to run behind people and try to get some wind cover. This is one of the few places where you can actually get a rhythm. And rhythm is important for marathoning. Take advantage of any of those times where you can settle in and get into the flow. Let your legs flow. This is the time to do it. Here's some pictures of First Avenue. The crowds at First Avenue, most especially as you're exiting off the Queensboro Bridge. That picture is over here on the left. This will be one of the most exciting parts of the entire course. You will be able to hear the crowd as you're descending Queensboro Bridge. You can't even see them. 50 feet, 100 feet away, you can hear them. That's how loud they are. And as you approach them, it just becomes deafening. It is incredible. You have to be careful that you do not use all of that energy and excitement to push yourself too fast. It's very easy to get carried away here and look down and go, oh crap, I'm now running 20 seconds, 25, 30 seconds under goal pace. You should not be running that fast under. A little bit is okay, but that's too much. You have to pull back and keep yourself in check at certain points. This is one of those points. All right, we've crossed now into the Bronx. You're only in the Bronx for a hot second. It's not even a mile. It's like you're just there and you visiting and you leave again. There are several turns at this point. This is one of those sections where things have really started to thin out. Unless you're in that average, then if you're in that middle average time, then you're going to have more people throughout. But if you're on either of the ends, once you've reached the Bronx, you're going to have lots of room to move around, which is cool. If you have spectators and you want them to come and be able to see you, and you don't want to make them hassle with a lot of people to fight their way to get to the curb, then this is a good place for them to come because it doesn't involve them camping out for hours. So that's nice. Depending upon, their level of comfort and mobility. This here, look at that. Look at that section of the Bronx. Just not that much to see there, not that exciting. There is the bridge to get in and the bridge to get out, but they're not a lot. There's Again, this is a section where you're just turning a lot. You spend the whole time turning. 7 turns in 1 mile. It's hard to get into a rhythm when you're doing all of these turns, but you have to try. You have to do your best. This segment has the bridge on either side. It's the Willis Avenue Bridge to get into the Bronx. That's Bridge 4. And then the Madison Avenue Bridge leads you out of the Bronx, and that is Bridge 5. That's all the bridges, but it is not the last of the climbs. Here's some pictures. This is actually both, these are both pictures of the Madison Avenue Bridge. It's just from different directions. I just want you to see how not a thing it is. Like, it is a small little incline, but it's not a bridge in the sense that in the same sense as the Queens or the Verrazano or the Pulaski or anything like that. All right, now we're back in Manhattan again. So this is Manhattan Part 2. This section, mile 21 to 26.2, this is where your day is made or lost. This is the race right here. Make sure you know what is happening for all of these miles. This is the most important section. Toughest climb of the entire race comes in this section. And it's not a bridge, it's Fifth Avenue. I'm going to go over that in more detail, but after you do the Fifth Avenue climb, you enter into Central Park at mile 24. You exit to the south, you run up Central Park west, then you enter into the park again for the finish. This is the elevation for this end section. Look at that and look at it closely. It is not flat. Man, it would be much nicer if this was like a lot flatter here at the end. The thing about the end of a marathon is it is just gosh darn hard, right? It doesn't matter what the course is doing. It is just hard every dang time. Now, you take that hard and you put all of these hills and elevation things in it, and it just becomes that much tougher. But guess what? We are tough people and we trained for this, so we got it. You don't have to stress out, you got it. All right, nice flat section to start. At mile 21 there, you can see, look, nothing to be alarmed about. Getting back into Manhattan, getting back into your rhythm. Mile 21 to 22, nice and flat. This is where you need to start getting your game face and your game head into the strategy, because coming up, it starts at basically 22.75. You have a mile-long climb, and this is the third biggest climb of the entire race, and it's in just the really tricky part. It's at 5th Avenue, and it starts at 110th Street. It goes all the way up to 90th Street. Central Park to the end is also a series of rollers. Your legs are just jello. So you're just going to have to call on every little bit, every ounce of muscle you have, any bit of strength that you have, you're going to squeeze every ounce of it out as you go through this section. Do watch out for wind gusts. Another point for wind gusts is here on Central Park South, where it's nice and wide open. You can have the wind fighting there a little bit as you cross from east to west. I'm going to look here on the left is the 5th Avenue climb. Reasons that the 5th Avenue climb are reasons that is a tricky part. One is that it's imperceptible. You cannot see this climb ahead of you. This is not like a bridge where the visual is, oh, it goes up. And the other thing about this climb is that you do not get the down on the back end of this. You don't go up and down like the bridges. This is just an up to an up. There's nothing, there's no payoff on the other end. So for those two reasons alone, it is difficult. And then the third reason is that it's late in the race, right? And your glycogen stores are low, you're dehydrated, you're tired mentally, physically, right? And so this is one of those points where you're going to have to use every trick up your sleeve to get yourself through it. One trick that I personally like to use is taking it in small pieces. I said this before, we are not eating the apple in one bite. We're taking small bites of the apple. So my bites for this section are each block. As I said before, they're all numbered and you can see them. So it starts at 110. So all you need to do is I need to get from 110 to 109. Then I get to from 109, I get to 108. And you just go along that way, bit by bit by bit, pulling yourself along through each of those milestones. That's going to help you. If you try to take it all in 1 mile and think, I have to climb for a mile, it's too much. It's too much. Break it down. Break it down. If you have people who are like mobile and can get around, this is a good section for them to cheer at. It's a little bit difficult with crowds and navigating through road closures and all that stuff, because there's the park on one side and barricades from First Avenue on the other side, etc. So, but if you have a person that can like walk and run across the course and things, this is a good place for them to cheer, because you're going to need that energy and motivation. Then once you've gotten up that climb to 5th Avenue, you're at mile 24, you enter into Central Park. Let that scenery, let it change for you mentally, because at that point you only have 2 miles, 2.2 left to go, and you can suffer, any of us can suffer for that long, right? You're going to hurt, it's going to suck, but it's okay because it's not that long at that point. You're almost there. You're going to get closer and closer. You're going to start to taste the end, and you're going to start to feel relief as you get closer. Here on this right picture is Central Park South. It's really grandiose there. It's really exciting. All of this section from Central Park all the way to the end, thousands of people cheering you on. You're going to feel like a rock star if you let the energy from these people carry you. This is a section where you do want them to carry you, and let them carry you. The finish! Yay, we made it. Crossing into Central Park for the end of the race is phenomenal. I can't explain it to you. I can explain it in words, but I can't give you that emotion. You're going to feel it when you cross the line there. There are flags from every nation lining either side. There's huge grandstands on either side. There's video board of like showing the race, showing you finish. Speakers, they're announcing, they're playing music. It's incredible. It's an amazing experience. Enjoy this and celebrate what you've done. When you cross the finish line, celebrate what your body has allowed you to do. You can think later in the days following and the hours much later about what you would have changed different or done differently. What you need to do first is celebrate. Take your medal and be proud of yourself. Then, next step is to start thinking about recovery and get food into your body, and also water and electrolytes as soon as possible. This is going to aid the recovery process. In terms of food, we want a mix of carbohydrates and protein. The ratio is generally a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio. You need to replace everything that you've lost as soon as possible. It's going to help you. It's going to make you feel better. So do those things. Now, we're going to look at the finish line because, of course, nothing of this race is simple. So you don't just cross the finish and that's it. No, there's a whole other thing. There's a runners only area. It is huge. It is here in this map, that whole section. That is only runners allowed are within that boundaries. You can only exit on 3 different streets aside from the family reunion. The first street you can exit is West 76th Street. The second option is West 74th. And then the third is West 69th. You are allowed to exit through the family reunion area, and your family is allowed to meet you within that area. However, that is all screened, and there is security to enter that area, so they need to budget time for that. All of their bags will be searched, and they're asking that you not bring large bags or strollers. Obviously, if you need to, then you need to, but they request that you don't bring those things in there. There's a spectator viewing area for the end here. It is designated entrance points only, and designated exit point. And the exit point has to be to the south and exit to Columbus Circle. So again, if you have people that are going to cheer you on here, they need to allow for all of this time to get in to a certain spot and only that spot, and also out in a certain spot. I think this is not the best place to have people cheer for you, but if you know that's what you want to do, then that's what you can do. There's grandstands, as I mentioned. However, those are only for ticketed spectators, so you can't have grandma come and watch you there unless you buy a ticket. You have to do that in advance, and that's all secured and screened as well. There are multiple subway stations nearby. I've highlighted them here. As you can imagine, any of the roadway traffic, that includes buses, that includes taxis and Lyfts, Ubers, etc., they're going to be in heavy gridlock. The buses often, the crosstown buses, all in this park area are all rerouted. I mentioned before, I live on the west side, or on the east side, sorry, off the course. So me getting home after this race is like, it's a separate marathon. It's a whole other endeavor, process, takes a long time because there's just a lot of things are blocked and traffic is all jammed up. So as best you can, subway is going to be your best option. If you can walk to wherever you need to go, a walk is actually beneficial post race, if you know, as long as you're not doing a whole ton of it. But if you can walk to wherever you're staying, that is helpful. So as soon as you cross the finish line, you're going to get this recovery bag. It's going to have water, Gatorade, a New York apple, pretzels, and the SIS protein bar. I mentioned this before. Cross the finish line, get your medal, get your recovery bag, put things in your mouth, like right away. Don't wait, just put it in. And so any of these things in your recovery bag are going to help. Try to get those in. It is 10 blocks. 10 blocks just to get out of Central Park. You don't cross the finish line and then exit. No, you cross the finish line and then walk for 10 blocks north in Central Park before you can exit. Here again is why you need to start getting things in as soon as possible, because you're not going to be near rest or hot meal or anything anytime soon. It's going to take you time to do this whole walk. If you've opted for the gear check, you have to walk even further than everybody else because you have to walk further south to retrieve your things. The gear check pickup will be from 69th to 72nd Street, there on Central Park West. If it's cold, it's usually cold in November in New York. You want to make sure you try to keep yourself warm as much as possible for as long as possible, even though you just run a marathon and you're sweaty and gross and hot. Once you stop running, you're going to start to chill really quickly. So they're going to give you a space blanket or one of those heat sheet things. They're going to give you that to you first. Wrap yourself up in that, and then you're going to walk again for a long time to get out of the park, and they're going to give you the poncho then once you've exited onto Central Park West. So just don't wait to get cold before you start worrying about warming up. Try to warm yourself up as soon as possible. Cell service probably not going to work here because there's going to be a whole ton of people all in this same small area, all on their phones, trying to be on their phones, and it doesn't work. So what you have to do is you have to make a plan. If people are going to meet you, you have to make a plan for where you're going to meet them, and you have to know in your head where it is, and they have to know roughly what time you're going to get there, but they should know that it's going to be like 30 minutes, maybe even 40 minutes after you cross the finish line for when you're going to actually arrive to the meeting place. I recommend you have people meet you somewhere inside to make it convenient for them, because again, they're going to be waiting for you for several minutes. There are lots of options all along Broadway there and some along Columbus and within the Upper West Side itself. But good options are things like Starbucks, any of the pharmacies like CVS or Duane Reade, things like that. There's this David Rubenstein atrium. But you know, places, I think there's like Target and Best Buy, all within that Upper West Side Broadway area. So somewhere warm where they can wait and, you know, have some bit of a distraction whilst you slowly shuffle your way through this gauntlet to get out of Central Park and from the finish line and out of Central Park. All right. Now I'm going to go through pacing, and in this section, I'm also going to explain what I mentioned before about the GPS watch thing. So this is applicable to every race. This is a super helpful section. I actually do this. I include this part in all these presentations now. Especially for this race, this type of race, you need to go by effort, not the number. Your goal pace is not the single number and all the splits are the same. You will run by effort and your paces will be within a range and they will be up and they will be down. So you'll run slower than marathon pace and you'll run faster than marathon pace. Hopefully the average between the climbs and the descents and the flats where maybe you try to pick it up a couple of seconds, hopefully after all of that, you average what your target marathon pace is in the end. That's the goal. So here I have a couple of formulas. These are from famous coaches. You know, this is like the science take on this. So this is all about averages. And so it's not that this is all perfectly calculable and it's all the same for everybody. But John Kellogg, famous coach, says for every 10 feet of elevation change, your time is altered by 1.7 seconds. And so if you use that formula, you know, I just told you before that the Verrazano Bridge is a 150-foot climb. So you can divide that by 10 and then multiply it by 1.74 to give you a rough estimate of what, you know, vicinity of that mile is. This is Jack Daniels. He has this quote. He says, for every percent gradient of incline, it will slow you down by 12 to 15 seconds per mile, while every percent gradient of decline will aid you by 8 seconds. So here again, different formula, different things we're talking about. We're talking about percent gradients. But the thing I want you to take away here is that the incline will slow you down more than the decline will benefit you, right? But the difference is small, and you can see that here in these numbers, right? So 8 seconds under on the decline, 12 to 15 seconds over on the incline. These are, you know, again, on average, but the difference between 8 and 12, 4 seconds. That's nothing. In the course of a marathon, 4 seconds, nothing. It's fine. We can all make that up. We don't have to panic about that. But these are things we want to keep in mind as we're pacing. All right, now I'm going to explain some things about GPS. So your watch, this little device here on your wrist, uses GPS. And it is your location and the numbers that it shows are given to you by satellites. And satellites circle the Earth. They are orbiting space. So if you think about it in those terms, it becomes a little bit clear that, hey, this thing on your wrist and hey, that thing in space may not always be exactly aligned and 100% accurate 100% of the time. They're not. It's subject to a couple of different factors, but one is GPS drift and the second is environmental factors. All of this leads to inaccuracies. So if your watch doesn't know where you are, it can't tell you what your pace is. It can't tell you what you're running. It can't tell you what distance you've covered. What is GPS drift? GPS drift is the difference between where you actually are and where your watch, where your GPS thinks you are. So if those are not the same. Location accuracy is about 3 meters, which is 10 feet, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, sorry. So that is some variation, right? What does that mean? Say you are located in space right in the middle of that target. Well, your watch might think you're there out on the outer edges of that target, anywhere, you know, 10 feet difference. 10 feet doesn't seem like a big difference, but the longer you're out there, the more it adds up. So within 1 mile, that is 5,280 feet. Marathon obviously is 26.2 miles. So if your watch is, you know, just slightly off, but slightly off for the distance of a 26.2 marathon, well, hey, that can add up to be quite a bit. Other factors, GPS interference. What is interference? Environmental things that get in the way that cause your signal to be interrupted or obscured. There's several things that can cause that. Tall buildings and large groups of people. I think you all know that, but New York City Marathon is going to have those things like in spades, right? This here is a picture of crossing of the Queens Bridge, crossing into Manhattan. And this just gives you a really great visual. You are surrounded on all sides. You have steel overhead, steel on the sides. You have concrete barriers on either side, right? Obviously, your watch is not getting a good signal and a good connection to the GPS satellites, which are in space, whilst you're underneath and blocked by all of these things. And then, of course, large groups of people. I mean, largest race in the world, largest marathon, sorry, in the world. So yeah, a lot of people. So what do you do about this? There's a solution, and it's fine. You don't have to worry that your GPS may be off because there's another way around it. You use the elapsed time and the course markers. That's how you pace the race. That's how you know that you're on target. That's how you know if you're ahead or behind. You should have on your watch the elapsed time. You use that indicator and you press the start and the go on your watch as you were crossing the actual start line, the timing mat of the race. Do not start it while you're back in the corral and you're like getting your way to the start. No, cross it exactly on the starting line so that your watch time matches your chip time. Your chip time is your race time. Nothing matters other than the chip time. Your official race finish is based on that chip. It doesn't matter what your watch says. No one cares. I care. No, but like for purposes of qualifying or purposes of your finisher certificate or purposes of placing, etc., it's all on the chip. Here's some things I recommend everybody have on their watch. I recommend you have a single screen with this data. A, current pace, B, distance, 3, that timer, which is the elapsed time, and then 4, average pace. There's several apps that you can use that have this. You can download them. They're free. They make it super easy. But you don't have to do that. You can just use the settings on your Garmin and you can set it up to have the screen display whatever you want. But it's super helpful to have it all on one screen so you're not trying to scroll through things or figure out where things are. Please note, if your distance is incorrect, your average pace is incorrect. You can look at your average pace and you can know what you would like to hit. Say, for instance, you're trying to run a 3:30 marathon, so your pace would be an 8-minute mile. And if you look at your watch and you say, hey, I'm running an 8-minute mile, that's great. But let's say you're crossing at mile 10 of the marathon and your watch has you clocked at 10.05. Then your average pace, according to your chip time and what you're actually running, is slower than what your watch says. This is confusing. I'm going to say it a couple of different ways so that people can understand. Most often, your watch is going to overestimate your distance. Your watch, when you finish this race, will be over the distance. Therefore, your average pace on your watch is going to show faster than what your chip time is actually going to register. That means if you're targeting an 8-minute mile for your race and you want to finish at 3:30 and that's what you want your chip time to be, your average pace on your watch probably needs to be something like 7:55. Faster, right? This is complicated. This is advanced level stuff, but once you get into this and once you're targeting a specific time, this is stuff you need to know. All right. If you want to pace with a pace band, I do recommend using a pace band. However, it should be effort-based pace band. There are options to download an effort-based pace band. One great option is findmymarathon.com. So please do go download that and print it out or write it down if you like. But this will give you the elapsed time and it will be based on the elevations of the course. And so you can use that with your pace band and the timer on your watch and the course markers, and you can finish exactly where you want to finish and all of your hard work and training will pay off. You will have a perfect race and everything will go smoothly. And that is it. And I have talked so much. Thank you everybody for watching. If you have questions, I'm just going to show this last screen. You can email me. This thing is going to cut us off soon, but I will also take any questions if anybody wants. Here's my email though, if you want to email me. All right. So now I have to do this thing where I go back to the chat. Does anybody have questions in the chat? Someone's typing. There's a lot of information. I know it's a lot of information. I'm going to have this available it's recorded. I'll be sharing it later so everybody can go through all of this and review it. You can send me questions. If I'm coaching you individually, I'm coaching some of you individually. We're going to talk about this. We're going to have a phone call. So you don't have to like keep all this in your head, but it's good to be exposed to this, right? Have this information, plan out your race.